All right. Yeah, I guess we can get started before I don't want to waste too much time. My introduction. My name is Trevor Surface. I'm with the City of Sugar Land. I'm a GIS analyst. We're going to be going over kind of how GIS and emergency management lens kind of hand to hand. Officially, this is called organized chaos, making sense of emergency data, and really kind of how Sugar Land has taken the data associated with emergency management events and leveraged it for to make it as powerful as possible. I typically have my emergency management coordinator presenting with me, but it's probably a little bit better today since these are GIS heavy folks. He speaks in that emergency management language that if you don't know it, it's real hard to get. So it's a quick agenda. We're going to quickly go over GIS and emergency management. We're going to go over problem framing, EEI standards, so central elements of information, prioritize data collection, data visualization, and then kind of going over how all of this combined to be beneficial for the city of Sugar Land and to show how it can work with your either your organization or for the high school kids, how GIS isn't just map making for the National Park Service or something. It's actually can be used in these life-saving critical events that we saw with like Hurricane Harvey or the winter event. It's GIS and emergency management. So of course, GIS is a framework for gathering, managing, and analyzing data. Data is very critical in the emergency management realm. It is how our emergency management coordinators and managers help make decisions. It is how our emergency operations centers, our EOCs, can facilitate that decision making out to the different departments, the different sections in an emergency event. We see it being used in all phases, the mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery phase, as well as kind of everything around it and need to. And then these are kind of the main phases of an emergency event. And of course, teamwork is the dream work. It is very beneficial for emergency management and GIS to work together to come with a product that helps save lives at the end of the day based off of that. So I'm going to quickly go over some examples of these phases. So mitigation, what we do with the mitigation, of course, is trying to get ahead of an event, and it's essential to reduce the loss of life and property. So this example is a FEMA flood planning map. This is in Sugar Land. And what this does is it helps us determine the areas that are more likely to flood when there is a rain event based off of the 200-year or 500-year floodplain. And with that, we can help ensure that people are not going to be, or if you live in that, we can help them with to avoid the flooding and helps us if we need to call an evacuation or not. Of course, the insurance side of it, which is one of the biggest issues now. And then we have preparedness. So preparedness is the actions taken in advance that develop that operational capabilities, which enables a more efficient and kind of effective response to emergency. So what this is one of our internal planning maps for a special event. We have coming up, it's our Christmas tree lighting in December. And you'll see these you have your base map with all your streets, but you're also using the points. And the points actually tell us where we have our casualty collection points, our roadblocks, staging areas, our incident command, our decon site if we need it. So with this, as we go through this preparedness, the day of, there's going to be no question where all this is. If you don't plan a staging area for an ambulance, when the ambulance shows up, instead of spending valuable time trying to figure out where it's going to go, by preparing that and mapping out that preparation, it helps us and helps the EMTs save a life. Then we have our actual response. So this is the wind maps during Hurricane Nicholas. And with this, during an event, we use GIS data not only to show where something's happening, but to help us kind of facilitate what part of the city or what part of the state response needs to go. With this, you can help allocate and reallocate resources. So there's no question or no waiting on that response. So this is where that highly accurate and timely data is necessary, as well as being, and as well as the spatial aspect kind of helping, because it shows you where an event happened. And it kind of gives that that graphic look at the data. I mean, it's one thing if I gave you a table with coordinates on there. It's another thing if you actually show someone a map. And then you're also with the GIS to analyze that data as needed. So with this map, we can show the predicted wind for Sugar Land, or if we're in the regional area, kind of show the change of wind throughout the region. And then we have the recovery aspect. So the recovery would be after an event, how are you going to provide that relief to the public, to residents, and provide the goal of returning property, society, and livelihood back to the normalized conditions. So within Sugar Land, we have damage and debris assessment programs. With that, we send assessors out to kind of get an idea on the effects of the incident. So if you look at this dashboard right here, we sent assessors out after the winter storm. They gave a look at these different categories of buildings and what was the overall damage. With this, we were able to give that information to FEMA, and FEMA is able to allocate resources to the area based off of these numbers. So if the area is being affected more, obviously more money would be given to that area, as well as that critical threshold to actually qualify for funding and refunding. There's also another kind of GIS impact for crowdsourcing. So crowdsourcing is very useful to emergency managers and even the general public, because it gives that real world, that real life data feed to the EOC. A lot of times your EOC is going to be in a single location, and you will have other employees out, but they won't be able to get a widespread information that we can see with crowdsourcing. Now, with the crowdsourcing, you also run into the issue of that quality assurance and quality control will be lower, but you can have that data come in, vet it, and then it helps you make that decision. It's just that wide base of data and a wide base of information. There's a lot of crowdsourcing, kind of public crowdsourcing information resources for GIS. There's CEDAR Digital Group Core, sorry. They provide a shelter map, and it's one of the most comprehensive shelter maps of the entire area. So most areas will have their shelter map for their city or state. This provides it for everywhere. GIS Core, that's another organization people can join. They actually dispatch missions for individuals to join and help. And then Skywarn and MPing. So this is through the National Weather Service. You can get trained in it, or you could just submit weather reports, and this will provide kind of that real life experience weather information, and helps them issue watches and warnings based off that information. So that was that quick introduction. So now dealing with data. So problem framing. One of the biggest problems, or some of the biggest problems we're facing, is timely decision making is dependent on the timely, relevant, and accurate information. If you're making a decision based off of data that we got 24 hours ago, you're already behind. Even an hour ago, you're already behind. You want as timely and as accurate information, or as relevant information as possible, because during an incident, things are changing rapidly. During the winter freeze, we had incidences of the weather, cold affecting a lot more. But if we lose a water line, a water main because of a bust, that decision goes into effect on whether we need to shut that road down and react that way. Information-driven operations are more effective and efficient. Of course, it's those data-driven decisions that you can't you can use your empirical decision-making, but you really need that real data to back it up in case there's any either scrutiny in the end, but also helps you respond. Multiple data sources create uncertainty and delayed reporting. If you have two different data sources for traffic, like say you're using Waze and Facebook or these kind of Twitter, people tweet about it, you lose that certainty in your data. You really want to use kind of one data source, especially a data source that's been deeply vetted and is deeply trusted. That way, that uncertainty goes away, and that reporting is as timely as possible. And then multiple storage locations create silos and the potential for less than complete understanding of the situation. So if you have data all over the place, one person won't know where to get data later. So we run into that issue with like rainfall, right? So with rainfall, we have, you can look at rain gauges, the national, you can look at the National Weather Service's rain gauge. But then we also have the Harris County flood control district gauges as well. And then they're in two different locations. There is some overlap, but if you want that one source of information, you kind of need to put it into one spot so it's easier to access. The goal for all of this was creating a common operational picture, and this is where GIS came in. GIS came in especially on how to deal with these DEI standards, which is your central elements of information. A lot of these are kind of based off your operational requirements. They're also evidence-based. So after Hurricane Harvey in 2017, FEMA came out with these community lifelines. These were set standard information kind of buckets that allowed people to set or put their information under. And we came out with these 7, so safety and security, food, water, shelter, health and medical, energy, communications, transportation, and hazardous materials. These are these typical community lifelines. With these, your different elements of information will fit under there. So for food, water, shelter, of course, that'll be your shelter statuses or your food. So we saw this during the early parts of COVID. If you had like a issue with your food supply into your area, maybe a smaller town had a supply chain management issue, your community lifeline would degrade based off of that. Energy, of course, if you had your power grid failure or fuel's not getting delivered, then your energy would be at fully red level. A lot of these need to be centrally managed and aggregated, so you're not hitting different websites or different people for different elements of information. You can make a decision based off of every category in one spot. And then of course, have them prioritized. During a hurricane, you don't really need to know what the temperature is going to be like as much as you need to know what the predicted wind and the predicted rain or the current level of the rain or current level of wind will be. And of course, the uses, planning and operational shaping your operations actually, and then the transition before phases. And a lot of these need to be prioritized with that data. So you have your base EEIs, so your hurricane landform time, your prioritized EEI, which is your rainfall amount, and then your commander's critical EEI, which would be an example of like rainfall in a problem area. So if you have an area of your city or town or state that floods a lot, you kind of want to track the rainfall in that as opposed to the other areas while making your information. We prioritize data because, as I said before, not all data is necessary for every event. I mean, there's not really one piece of data that can be used for every event, cookie cutter. You kind of want to use these different categories for your different event and shape it that way. The problem with that is that if you create a website, you don't want to be changing your data streams and visualization every event. You want to be able to just have one site that's kind of standard and hit it every time for an event. We also, big issue here was data visualization. So we kind of came up with 3 goals with this, is visual cues based off of priority. We wanted color indicators and key data points that are easy to read. Color indicators are obviously going to catch your eye and then you also have that your mind goes to something when you see something red. Red is going to be bad. So we put in those green, yellow, orange scales in there show the severity based off of kind of critical thresholds. Easiest to access, most important, and most used. So with this tiered pages and map views, so when you hit a website, that first page is going to be the most important stuff that you want to see. And then customize user views for specific needs. This allows each user to turn what they want to see and activate it or deactivate it based off of that. If our public works director won't need to see the status of the police station as opposed to the water plants, lift stations, and et cetera. And I think I have an example. So what we did is we put up 3 levels up the Brazos River from Sugar Land. We put their rain gauge, and we actually created color indicators based off of the stage level. So if we're at action level, it'll be yellow, minor flooding will be orange, major flooding will be red. And then we actually have the purple category, which is the, you better get your arc ready. I do want to warn you that I went in and changed the threshold of these colors. We're not actually seeing major flooding in Bryan, Texas right now. I just wanted to show that this is what we'll see on our website when that, and I'm going to pull up the website here in the end and kind of show what I'm discussing. And of course, the biggest issue we face is data collection. So not only are we trying to automate sources as much as possible, we are also using these Esri tools, survey, 1, 2, 3, quick capture, table edits, and web apps to give us different feeds and different sources of the necessary information. So data in action. So we're able to successfully build a website that we call our common operations picture. Let me pull it in here. I tested it earlier and we should be good. So with this, on this front page, we have our situational awareness dashboard. This is all of the major points of information that you need to see. And about 1/3 of this to 1/4 of this is automated based off of the sources that we were able to get. Some of it is going to be that survey 1, 2, 3 or quick capture page that we already had. This page right here is pretty much the primary source of information that we want people to give out or we want people to see. So we'll have the visual cues right here and right here. These will change color. We'll also see that if you go to our layer selection, you can turn layers on if you want to see statuses of the police station, airport, or water treatment plants. You'll see that their logo came up and then there's a green ring around it. That'll turn yellow for degraded or red for failure state. If you zoom in, like I mentioned earlier, we're already preparing for a Christmas event, and these are all of our pre-planned. The plan is that in the field, you can bring up this web map on your phone and see where and give you that situational awareness during our event. And we're also going to be accepting kind of the data feeds during it. If you go to our LID status, so our levee and improvement district, all of these are based off of the river level and their critical thresholds or their triggers, which are listed here. So if the river goes above 29 feet, we'll see that this turns red, and then the map will actually turn red as well. With that, you're able to look at this one page and get all the information you need. And then our community lifelines as well. So this page kind of buckets all of our community lifelines. These indicators will turn green, yellow, and red based off of their current level. So if we see communications down, of course, we'll have a failed state and then it'll be red. So we can get that kind of single look using visual cues, using prioritized data, and using everything that was previously mentioned. So this is our common operational picture. We've created it after the winter storm, and we were able to successfully use it during, of course, Tropical Storm Hurricane Nicholas, and then after to support recovery. So why I kind of named this data in action debris assessment is after these 2 events, the winter storm and then Tropical Storm Nicholas, we developed a debris assessment program, and that really kind of honed in after Nicholas and was very successful. So what it was is we kind of had to phase it out. So for the debris assessment program, we needed, kind of the response. And this is the recovery response, mind you. This is after the event. People's trees were knocked down, tree limbs were knocked down. All these different items were broken and people left them out in the curb. To prevent the solid waste contractor from being overwhelmed, we wanted to get an accurate idea on how much material people were placing out there. So we sent out surveyors. A very simple survey, asked 2 or 3 questions, and they used Survey123, which automatically got the location. So all we wanted to know was your debris type and the amount. So as you'll see, the image on the left is the blank form, and the one on the right is the filled out form. They were able to submit that, and then with that, we were able to get kind of the data visualized. So with the dashboard, we weren't only supposed to see, we didn't only see the location, we saw the type of debris. And then using the calculations, we were able to see that at this day, we had 943.6 cubic yards of green waste that needed to be picked up or that was assessed. And then of course, the next phase of that was to do some data analysis. So we were able to tier that off into the different solid waste pickup days, right? So if we're on Wednesday, we were worried about Thursday's pickup, which would be the bottom left graph, and kind of see how much they're going to go. And we're also to give the daily capacity based off of what our contractors capacity and then our public works capacity was. This was given to our solid waste stakeholders, which means our internal solid waste group and our contractor. And they were able to make a decision to what needed to be done next. And that is where we see these data-driven decisions as mentioned earlier. And then, it was just a lot of dashboards, a lot of graphs. I was listening to a comedian. He said the one thing that came from COVID is it gave everybody who makes dashboards a job. So it just seems like dashboards is going to be the future for this data visualization. Our outcome was kind of what's shown here, comparing our winter event and Tropical Storm Nicholas. We were able to improve the program for Nicholas and be more efficient in a shorter amount of time. I mean, we almost hit the same total amount of submissions in 4 less days. We did see less volume. Nicholas didn't end up being as bad as what was thought, but we were able to see and show this on and track it. So the outcome of this debris assessment program was to minimize expenses. We improved the efficiency of our solid waste collection and kind of provide a framework for a full and more intensive assessment program. So not only debris or the damage that you saw on the earlier slide, but also businesses, not only send out a survey to business owners, but actually go out and get our permitting group to assess them, and then restaurants, so we get that code enforcement out there as well. So that is kind of a comprehensive look at how not only GIS is using emergency management, but how Sugar Land is leveraging that teamwork between emergency management and GIS to be more efficient in its decision making, save money at the end of the day, and save people time. Are there any questions? You can feel free to put in the chat, or I don't think you may be able to unmute yourself. I don't think so. All right, if there's no questions, then thank you. Like I said, I usually do this with our emergency management coordinator, but he couldn't jump on. If you have any questions or comments or want to see how we're built this or recreate it, email us. I just put the actual email, the contact information in the chat, so you can just copy and paste that. And then of course, thank you to all of our sponsors. Once again, I reiterate, if you're a teacher, please put your class headcount into the chat so we can track that for participant lists. And then if you enjoyed the presentation, go ahead and rate this session. So it's on, if you go to the presentations session site and then scroll down, you'll see rate this session. feel free to go in there. I believe they're doing prizes. Where is it? Yep. Yeah, free Esri product. So this is very critical to see the success of how we did it this year and kind of build on that and gear next year's presentations to what is needed. So if there's no more questions or comments, then thank y'all for joining.
Thank you, Trevor. It's great to hear all that. And thanks everybody for joining. If you're able to type into the chat, please drop the number of students. As he said, we really need to have that information if we can. So if you have the ability, please do. All right. Looks like people are typing some things in there. All right, Trevor, that's all I had if you don't have anything else.
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for helping facilitate that.
Absolutely. And thanks to everybody for joining. And we'll go ahead and end the session now, but you should still be able to, actually, I'll leave it up for a few more minutes so people can type in the number of students if you could. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, looks like I'm going to go ahead and end the session. Thanks, Trevor. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you.